Hello out there, and welcome to the Revere Veterans and Community Show. Today we have 4 special guests, and folks, I really mean special. This is going to be a little emotional show because we have three Gold Star mothers and a Gold Star father, and I'd like to introduce them. On my left is Flo Johnson, who also is a World War II veteran. Thank you for coming, Flo.
You're very welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
Next to her is Karen Lounsbury, who's a community veteran, helping out at the VA hospital and at the homeless shelters. Thank you, Karen. And next to her is Miss Dolly Sullivan. Dolly, you can tell them what you do.
I'm the president of the Mass and Rhode Island Department of the American Gold Star Mothers.
Thank you.
Okay.
And sitting next to her is her husband, Jim Sullivan, who happens to be a Vietnam veteran.
Right.
So
and
we're going to start. So we're going to start on not in a particular order, but we're going to go by the ages, just in case. So Karen, I'd like to start with you.
Youngest first.
Okay, Miss Lounsbury, if I may call you that.
Sure, call me Karen.
Right. You do a lot for the veterans, but more important, you are a Gold Star mother. And if you would like to, I would like you to tell us about your son, if it's possible.
Sure. My son, PFC Brian Lounsbury, was in the Army, and he was killed while he was on active duty.
And where?
In Fort Hood, Texas.
And how old was he, Miss Lounsbury?
He was 18. He was hit by a car driven by another soldier.
That's sad. That is really sad.
Thank you.
That's friendly. And you, Mrs. Johnson? I mean, you?
Oh, I lost my boy in August 27, 1967. He was in Hoi An in Vietnam. He was in the 3rd MP Battalion, and he was hit by a machine gun at a hospital. And I had an opportunity to go to Vietnam with 3 boys who were all stationed over there, and they had names I can't, right offhand I can't think of it right now. And they paid for our way. We were there for 15 days, and we went from the top of Vietnam to the bottom, and we went all over. And my son Sergeant from Connecticut came up and went with me. And I also got to meet a friend of my son's out in California while we were waiting for the plane to go to Vietnam. It has brought kind of a closure where I know what kind of a country that he last saw his life was gone. And the next thing I know, he's home, but I wish he had come home walking instead of being carried home. Thank you.
Thank you, Flo Johnson. And you too, Karen Lounsbury. Mrs. Sullivan, could you tell us a little about your son? Because I'm getting emotional.
Our son, Captain Christopher Sullivan, was always bound for the military. He was in Civil Air Patrol as early on in grammar school. And actually, his senior year of high school, he was a cadet commander for the Worcester Civil Air Patrol. He went into college right out of high school. He had joined the National Guard, and the next year he ended up going into the Army Reserve because he started doing ROTC at the University of Mass Lowell. He was commissioned and assigned to Germany. Over in Vilseck, Germany, he was like a tank commander at first. They went into Kosovo for 6 months, and while he was there, he got bored with the tanks because they couldn't really move him around over there. The roads weren't capable of carrying them. And he went into Advanced Scout. From there, he came back to the States and went to school to study to be a captain. And then he was sent to Fort Hood, where he got ready to deploy to Iraq. And he was killed in Baghdad, Iraq, on January 18th, 2005, 3 weeks before he was coming home.
That's sad. Mr. Sullivan,
Right.
first of all, you are a Vietnam veteran.
Yes, I am.
I'm a World War II veteran, and I want to salute you, sir, and I want to thank you.
I appreciate that. I was a World War II vet, you know.
No, you weren't. You were a Vietnam vet.
Oh, yeah, Vietnam vet. Can't remember everything, you know. But when I come, you know, it was interesting in the Army, you know. Like anybody, it's hard to talk about it, so you just don't say anything about it. But when I come home, you know, just like most people, went back to work, and the people around me gave me the support I needed to adjust after being in the service for a few years. So I was like probably pretty lucky, you know. I don't have any effects from Agent Orange that I know of, so I feel I'm more than lucky.
I'm pretty lucky to have you up here, sir, and I want to thank you for your service. You know, I got a little emotional.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Because when the Vietnam vets came back to this country, I remember, and it was 1975, I think, was the last time when the war ended, was it 75? So that's 38 years ago.
Right.
So I was 47 at the time.
Yeah.
And I remember how the people were treating the Vietnam veterans when they came back, like war criminals. You know, but they call us, I'm a World War II, and they say we are the greatest generation. And I have to admit it, you are the greatest generation just as well as me. Whoever puts on a uniform is the greatest generation.
That's right.
But more than that, the mothers who gave their sons up so you and I can have the freedom, you people are really the greatest of the great generations. And I want to thank you, Flo, Karen, and Dolly.
Thank you.
And I know you have a picture of your son there, Jim.
Yes, I do.
Why don't you show it to the camera and tell us a little about him so they can put it right on the air?
This is a picture of our son, and it was taken when he was over there in Iraq. The picture's been doctored up a little bit because the actual picture had a thermometer over his head that and he sent that home because it was reading 120 degrees
Yeah.
the day the picture was taken.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
And you know, we got a lot of pictures from him on mostly over the computer,
Yeah.
because he was married to a German girl, and she left after Chris got killed, you know, and went back to Germany with our grandson, and we haven't seen or heard of either one of them since.
But you will now, because I'll tell you why. What we're doing here goes on Facebook and YouTube, and if you know where your grandson is, you could notify his mother to tune on, or vice versa, and I'll get back to you.
Well, we know where her mother is, and she communicates with us off and on during the year, and you know, we at least know they're alive and well anyhow, and that's right
What's
at this
his
time. It's
grandson's
enough.
name, by the way?
It's Christopher.
And the last name?
Oh, the little boy is David.
David.
Sullivan.
David Sullivan.
And his mother is Sandra.
That's my middle name, by the way, David.
Oh, David.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But not Sullivan, it's Morris.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, we'll accept you as an honorary Irishman.
Okay, cool. I got something good for you later on. By the way, I met Dolly and I met you, Jim, at the Wall That Heals in Revere when it came here.
Right.
Oh yes.
And I happened to go, maybe you did too, we went out to the Snowman, and I was looking at the ages of the people that got killed in Vietnam. I'm sure your son was up there.
Yeah. Well, our son was in the service quite a while. So.
Right. There was one kid there that I thought the age was wrong, 15 and a half years.
Might not have been.
Wow.
No.
Who was that?
Yeah, I said it might not have been because some of them lied about their age. And
Yeah,
went
a
in.
lot of
Well,
them
they
did.
said
Yeah.
15 and a half, and I went back and I asked about, I wish I could remember his name, but I can't. And I asked one of the ones that bought the ball, Kopak, the family, and they said he lied about his age, and he got by with it, and he was only out there a month before he got killed. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
that was it. The oldest one, I think, was 69 or 70 that was out there.
Yeah.
I would like to, I know it's sad, if you wish not to talk about it, please shut me up, but could you tell us about your sons growing up, and I will start with you, Flo, and we'll go right down the line.
My son went to the public schools in Boston, Charlestown there, and he wanted to be a printer. And he went to Boston Tech and graduated and was hoping that he would have his own business. And when it came time of the Vietnam War, I told him, don't go in the Marines because the Marines are the first ones to go over. And I said, go in the Navy because you'll always have a shelter over your head and you'll always have food on your table. Because I am also a Navy girl. I was in the World War II as a wave. I went in 1944. And So he went to sign up for the Coast Guard, but at that time the Coast Guard was all taken, he couldn't get in. So then he got drafted, and he left that morning, and he called me about 2 hours later, and he said, "Guess what, Mom?" And I said, "Oh, they're sending you home." He says, "No," he says, "they just drafted me into the Marines." And I said, "Oh." So anyways, he went to boot camp, and he did all that, and then that was in 1965, in November 65, and he went to boot camp, and then the next thing I know, he was being sent over in 67. And, well, he was down in Washington. He was going to be an honor guard. And somehow he was in the kitchen all the time, peeling potatoes, as he said, doing kitchen detail.
Yep.
And he didn't like it, so him and his buddies put him for Camp Pendleton. And I knew the minute he put him for Camp Pendleton, he was going over. And so, sure enough, he went to Camp Pendleton. And I saw him in July. It was the last time I saw him. We went to Minnesota so he could see his grandmother. And we left him there, and he flew into Camp Pendleton, and then he went over. And his sergeant from Connecticut was a good friend of his and went with him. And he got stationed in Da Nang, and then his sergeant thought it'd be good duty if he went down and got at a hospital in Hoi An. So he went down to Hoi An and was guarding the hospital. And on August 27th, he was killed. So it's been 40-some-odd years, and there's still that empty seat that I'll always remember.
Thank you, Flo, and God bless you. God bless you.
But our war was supposed to have been the war of all wars, the World War II.
I know that.
Yeah.
And so was the Korean and the Vietnam and the Afghan and the Iraqi and the Grenada.
That's
and
right.
what else is coming up, right?
That's right, yeah.
We're talking with Syria now. We're talking
Why can't we have peace?
Iran.
Why can't we have peace and all get along?
You know, we're only here a short time, really.
That's
When you
right.
think of it, you know, even if we live to be 100, which is nothing but a grain of sand compared to how long the world has been here.
That's
and
right.
like you say, Flo, why don't we just get along?
It's
You know,
over a
we
piece
can
of...
agree to disagree. Don't get me wrong. We're never all going to agree together. But
But
we
now
agree to
all the
disagree.
big shots that caused all this, where are they? They're 6 feet under.
That's right.
And like, what do they gain?
And by the way, we're all heading that way anyway.
That's right, yeah. So why can't we get along with the short time we're here?
Right. Jim, I'd like to ask, Mrs. Sullivan, or you too, Jim. You say your son was in Germany. I was stationed in Germany. Can I ask you what part of Germany he was in?
Vilsek.
I don't. That town don't. Was it near a big city?
No, it's
Near Regensburg, I think.
Oh, Regensburg.
yeah, and
Yeah.
it's,
By the way, Regensburg also had a concentration camp there when I was there, right at the end of the war.
Yeah.
A concentration camp at Regensburg, and I believe it was Dachau.
Dachau,
Yeah.
Dachau.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. My job, I'll be very brief. I spoke German, which is, I was an interpreter. And they needed me to translate for the DPs, what they call the displaced persons. And they sent me, I was stationed in Berlin, and we worked out of Berlin. I used to go to Frankfurt am Rhein, no, because there's two Frankfurts, one am Oder, one am Rhein, Munich, Southfelden, Wannsee, Reinickendorf. That's where I used to travel around, so that was my experience in Germany. And how long was your son in Germany, if I may ask?
3 years, I think.
Wow.
Because he was there when, you know, for a fair amount. Then they went to Kosovo.
Yeah.
And, you know, and
He had to be there a little later than me because when I was
Oh,
there,
yeah.
we could. No, the
Yeah,
reason I say that
a lot later
I
than
don't
you.
want to be that. I don't want to get that far.
Yeah.
But when I was there, because you said he married a German girl. When I was there, we couldn't even fraternize with them. We were told that if you as much as spoke to them and had anything to do with either a German gentleman or a German Fräulein or a Schatzi, what they called them in those days, we'd court-martial you and we would send you right home. So we couldn't. And then one day an order came out. Forget about the fraternization code. And my commanding officer, maybe you remember him, he might have still, no, was General Lucius D. Clay.
No.
I don't know if you ever heard of him.
No.
No.
General Clay. He was my commanding officer over there.
Yeah.
Karen, I want to get back to you now, if I may. Start with your son, if you would like to, if you wish
Sure,
to.
absolutely. Brian was Born in Germany, actually in Aschaffenburg.
He was born in Germany?
Yeah. My ex-husband was in the Army, so we were stationed there for 3 years.
Where, can I ask you where you stationed in Germany?
Aschaffenburg. Yep, he was born in Frankfurt at the...
Am Rhein or Frankfurt am Oder? No, it had to be Frankfurt am Rhein.
Yeah, yep, right at the hospital.
You know,
And,
excuse me, before
yeah.
you go, I got to tell you, I lived there for a while because I had to work out of there too. They didn't have, what they had there was the streetcars that used to run around Frankfurt. No subways, no nothing. And I lived on the street, I remember it to this day because it was called Eschesheimer Landstrasse, which was the Frankfurt main street there on where you go around. And it was nice. And of course, they had the Frankfurt. We used to land at the Rhine-Main Air Base. We used to fly out of Munich, land there, out of Berlin, land there. And I was there in 46. And the reason I want to emphasize 46, 47, 48, because our allies, and I do call our allies the Russians, right? They put the blockade on. They had a blockade. Now, we could not bring food, anything in through the Autobahn. There was a place called Helmstedt. And that's where the Russian zone started, and they would stop us there because the first time we went there, they turned us around and made us go all the way back. You're not going through the Russian zone. But then they started the Berlin airlift, and so we flew over for the time of there. And they would open up the door as you were coming into Tempelhof Air Base in Berlin, and we would drop chocolate for the kids that were down below, the German little kids. And you know, even though maybe 5 years earlier they probably would have been shooting at us if they were old enough, we Americans were never like that. We are the easiest going country in the world. You know?
Especially when it comes to kids.
Yeah. So I'm sorry I interrupted you, Karen. Go right ahead.
He grew up in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and he, was a great kid. He was the middle child, very quiet. He went to public schools until high school. He played North Cambridge Little League baseball. He went to Minuteman Technical School, where he took welding, and he loved it. But he always knew he was going to go into the military. I tried to get him to go to...
What was he, an iron worker when you say he took welding?
He took welding, but he wasn't in a job for that. He was in the Cavalry Scouts when he joined. Yeah. He wanted he went into the Civil Air Patrol, and that clinched the military for him. He went up to Norwich University and did a leadership school up there, and he just loved it. He did several of the summer encampments with the Civil Air Patrol, and he just loved the military, everything about it.
How old was your son, if I may ask?
He was 18.
Mama.
It was his first duty station. He did his basic training in Kentucky.
Just 8 years younger than when I went in.
Yeah.
I mean, 8 months.
8 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you, Mrs. Sullivan?
Our son was, he was the third child and the only boy, and we were delighted when we had him. And he had 3 mothers, which is not easy for any child, but he was, in spite of it, a very good boy. And he went to public school for the first few years, and then he went over to Julie Country Day, which was run by the Sisters of Notre Dame, up until 8th grade, from like 3rd grade to 8th grade. And then he went back to a public high school. But he really didn't give us any trouble. He was, a good kid. I like to say he was an average young man who did extraordinary things with his life.
I don't think he was average. I think he was greater than average, and all your kids were greater than average.
Yeah. So.
I got to ask Jim a question, and I know star mothers are wonderful women to go through what you go through, because this will be with you to the rest of your life. We sacrifice ourselves. I came out of the service. That was years and years ago. But with you women, it will be from the day that you got the bad news about your son till the day you go to your resting place. And that must be a stiff burden to carry. Am I right on that?
Well, the Gold Star Mothers is an organization nobody wants to join.
No.
And not only that, but the Gold Star Mothers now, I have met so many. I might have lost a son, but I have gained so many friends. I would never have met Karen. I would never have met Dolly or Jim. And I have friends from up in Alaska, a Gold Star Mother.
And I got it
all over.
Flo, when I went out on the Columbus Day, and they told me that you were Gold Star Mothers, and I saw you, and I went over to you, and I said, thank you for your service for your sons.
Yeah.
And when you told me you were a World War II veteran, I knew we had something in common. And if I wasn't married, we would have had a lot more in common. But I want to say something. No, it's really sad because I lost a son too, and like I told you, Karen and you
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
Mrs. Sullivan, you never get over it.
You don't.
never
No,
get over
no,
it. I mean, the first 3 years were the toughest years of my life for me, really.
That's right.
Yeah.
I would get up at night, I would think he would be coming.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. You wait for the door to open.
Right.
Yeah.
Every day that you wake up, you just have to deal with
When
it
the
all over
state
again.
police came over to my house, it was on a Sunday, I'll never forget it. I was watching a football game, and they told us the sad news. I got so upset that I kicked the door in the kitchen, and I literally broke the door. I literally put my foot right through it. That's how I felt.
I yelled at the poor Marine, and I said everything to the poor Marine. He just stood there looking at me. He understands. I understand, madam. I understand.
I
And I
have
kept
to ask
yelling.
you three ladies, they have things for Gold Star mothers, but he's also a Gold Star father. They have no organizations for Gold Star fathers, if I may ask.
Well, there is a Gold Star Father organization, but it's out of California.
Gold Star Dads, I think it is.
It's called Gold Star Dads. You can go online and.
But I mean, that's in California. What about the other 49 states?
Well, there's really nothing around. You know, I personally myself, I belong to the American Legion,
Yours truly?
and you know, a lot of them guys, you know, they don't really say a lot to you, you know, but they know what your problem is, because most of them have got all kinds of problems too, and you know, I belong to the American Legion for probably 27 years now. And probably the last 4 or 5 years, I've been kind of more active, and now I'm the commander of the Legion Hall in Sterling, 189.
Congratulations.
I don't know if that was that's a good thing or not, but
That's an excellent thing.
You're in my league now.
now I get to do more things. I don't make any commands though. And stuff. But, you know, it's all, you know, dealing with the people like that have the same problems that you do, you know, it helps and it makes
I
life
got
go
to
by.
tell you, when I look, and Flo will agree with me, when I look at the people of my generation, World War II veterans, I happen to be a young World War II veteran, but
Yeah.
usually most of them would be in their high 80s and into their 90s to be World War II. If you're Korea, you would be up in the 60s, no, you would be in the
70s and
mid-80s
80s, yeah.
if you're Korea. Vietnam are usually in the 60s or 70s, low 70s, high 60s
Yeah.
on there. But I have to say this, the Vietnam was a drafted army, am I correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
yeah.
The army we have today is a volunteer army.
Right.
And that is the
Right.
difference. And
Big
a lot of the
difference.
kids would be better off if they went into the army instead of roaming the streets and doing
Oh,
the
yeah.
mischief. And I tell you, when I didn't get drafted, like I said, I enlisted, and then I enlisted at a young age, and then I had to re-enlist again when I was old enough. But the army to me was the best thing that ever happened. It taught me this. I know that people are going to disagree with me, but it taught me discipline. It taught me how to be a good student and a good person as I grew up.
Well, I think the difference in the boys going in World War II compared to the other ones, that I think was we never knew what war was. We grew up in a peaceful time.
Well, you never lived in Brooklyn, Flo.
No, no, but I mean, you know, and I think because I know boys that graduated with me, they all enlisted. The minute they heard about Pearl Harbor, they all went over and enlisted. I mean, that was really something. That boys that never would have gone in the service, it wasn't for Pearl Harbor.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I never forget when Pearl Harbor, I was, like I said, I always seem to be watching a football game when something happens. I was watching a football game on a Sunday. 2:30, my mother runs out, and we were playing out in the street, just throwing ball back and forth. We were young kids. And she grabbed me by the collar, and she's dragged me in the house, and I started crying. I was wondering why. She said the Japanese just attacked America. She never mentioned Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
She said America. And, you know, being a kid, we got terrified on there until the next day when I was listening to the radio. In those days, we didn't have television. We had the radio. And then President Roosevelt made that famous speech about, you know, they that will live in infamy and all that jazz. That's how I remember it.
Yeah.
But like you say, Flo, we didn't have to go looking for people to register for the
No,
draft or
no.
volunteers. They were running by the hundreds
That's
of
right,
thousands
that's
to
right,
volunteer.
You had to get in line about a block away.
That's
Yep.
right, that's true, yeah.
And this, but in Vietnam, I know I had a couple of Vietnam veterans that came up here who are being treated for Agent Orange, I believe.
Oh,
it is.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And one of them has leukemia
Oh, yeah.
because of it. And he's going for treatment. And he mentioned to me something that I thought was pretty sad, that he has a hard time sometimes getting help from the Veterans Administration. And I don't know why they're so slow today.
I
I
don't
think
know.
they're working on that, though. They've made some big strides on that.
They have?
There
Yeah.
were issues, and especially in this state, we're fortunate that we live in this state because they have made huge strides at the VA system in this state.
Well, I get treated by the VA, and I got to tell you, they've been pretty good to me. I wouldn't say 100% perfect, but if I had to rate them, I would put them in the mid-90s, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And then I speak to people that come from other states, like New York, the other state that borders, I think it's Pennsylvania that borders down, Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pennsylvania. Mets are Mets, they say, you know. Sometimes they have to wait months before they even have an appointment, and some of them never live to see that appointment,
That's
Yeah.
right.
which is a shame. So I think the VA should be taking care of us first. I mean,
Yeah.
when I say us, I mean the veterans, and especially the Gold Star mothers, especially because you are really veterans of veterans. I mean, you sacrifice so much. And,
Yeah.
It's sad, but my wife goes through the same thing that you're going through, and sometimes I could see her, and she's 85 years old. She will sit at the table at night and shed a little tear.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
still remember.
It brings
Oh,
back
the mothers never
yeah.
forget because
No.
they carried them for 9 months.
That's
But-
right.
But we don't want to forget.
You know.
No,
We don't want to forget them.
No, what I mean, you raised them,
We
you
don't want
watched
to
them
forget.
grow
We don't
up.
want to forget them, but we don't want to forget how they left
Right.
us. That's what it is. Yeah.
Well, folks, I'll tell you, we got a couple of minutes left anyway. Why don't each one of you, first of all, let me thank each and every one of you, starting with, this time I started with you, Flo. I'm going to start with you, Mr. Sullivan. I want to thank you as a Vietnam veteran and as a Gold Star father for coming up here, and God bless you, my friend. Thank you, and I salute
you.
you. And I salute you for your service.
Yeah.
You too, Mrs. Sullivan. Thank you for coming up here and talking about your son. You too, Miss Lounsbury. Thank you for coming
having
up. And of course, my dear friend, lady, World War II veteran, Mrs. Flo Johnson. Thank you for coming up, Flo.
Okay. You're very welcome.
So if your people would like to close out by saying anything, please do. Feel free.
Yeah. Well, being we're really all involved with veterans, and we try to keep our children's memory alive by doing what we can
And we want to
take,
help you keep it alive.
to
That's
take
right,
care
yeah.
of their peers that made it back. So anything that anybody can do to make life better for the veterans. There's a run every year that the for the Wounded Warriors. It's they fought, we ride.
Flo, can
believe is the name
can
of
you
it.
do me a favor if I may ask you?
Yeah.
Miss Sullivan, any help that you need to help your organization, why don't you tell the people on TV if they could donate something, or if you need something, please do. It would be an honor for them to send something, whether it be money, whatever you need. Please mention
Okay.
it.
Well, we have a website, and it is Mass Rhode Island American Gold Star Mothers. Mass American Gold Star Mothers. And we are working on getting that a little bit more active. I'm the one who is a little not up to par as far as all the technology, but we're working on it. But we do have a site, and we do list things there. And we have a fundraiser. We had it for the first time this past year in
Okay,
April.
if people want to send money, let's say like I wanted to send you money, where would I send it to?
Well, I don't know. Can we just receive money?
Yeah.
No, we can't just receive money yet.
No.
But we have fundraisers, and we support other fundraisers.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah.
we
We
can
support
send you
the
some
hospitals
information,
and
and you
that.
can put it up. But if they check our website, there'll be things there that they can look to, and
so it's on your website.
it should be, yes.
Could you repeat that one more time, please?
MassGoldStarMothers.com.
Yeah.
Right. So folks out there, you heard from Gold Star Mothers, and anything you can do to help them, to help the veterans of this great country, please do so.
Yeah.
And I want to thank each and every one of you for coming up here. May God bless each and every one of you. And I'll start with you, Jim,
Yeah.
Dolly, Karen, and Flo. God bless our troops. God bless our great country, the United States of America, and the people of Revere. And thank you all for listening. And let me tell you, out there, this is for the Commonwealth. Thank these Gold Star mothers because they sacrifice more than anyone else in the Commonwealth. Thank you all for coming. And God bless you again.
Thank you for having
You're
us.
Thank
welcome.
you for having us.